Hi, I'm John from the Dorico team here at Steinberg. I'm very excited that in today's live session I'm going to give you a walkthrough of the brand new Dorico for iPad app, available now to download for free from the App Store. If you have an iPad, iPad Air or iPad Pro with iOS 13 or higher and 820 meg-ish of space to install, then download Dorico and this session will show you what you can do with Dorico for iPad. Daniel will be answering questions in the chat. But instead of pestering him, let's get started and I'll show you all of the things that you can do on this iPad app. I've got the chat here as well, so I'll try and keep an eye on that, but I can see lots of questions, so I think Daniel will be answering lots of those. So firstly, it looks like Dorico. It just really does. But it's on the iPad. So here you can see how I'll be controlling it here. So just by touching on the screen, and you can see a large version of the screen on there as well. So we have zones. So these, I suppose you might have called them panels before. We're calling them zones. So here we've got this zone over here. If I choose over here, then we've got a zone over here on the right-hand side. I'm just tapping on the screen. There's one at the bottom here. So there's a new mixer, and that's in the lower zone down here. You still have things like your properties panel down here for when you've selected a note or you've selected an item, then you can see the properties and things down the bottom, and you can show and hide those panels. You can use an Apple Pencil if you really want to, but for a lot of it I'm just going to be using my fingers and kind of controlling it that way. I'll also show you various other things that you can connect to the app, how you can use those if you have a keyboard or all those kind of things as well. So you can pinch and zoom, you can scroll around just with using your finger, just moving the screen around. Of course you've got playback and those kind of things, so if I, for example, select a note, I can just press play up here on the toolbar. You get the idea? So let's get stuck in, find out what all these buttons and things do, and find out how you enter notes and all of the other goodies and things that you want to know in this app. So to start off with, let's just tap on setup mode up here. So it just looks like Dorico. It just does, but it's on the iPad. It's really good. So to start off with, if you download Dorico for free from the App Store, then you can write for up to 2 players. So as you know, probably from the desktop version, you can have 2 players here. Here you can see I've actually got more than that. So the other options that you have is the free version you download, it has 2 players initially. If you already have a My Steinberg account, so if you already own Dorico for desktop, then you probably already have a My Steinberg account. You should have, and you'll be registered. So on the right hand side over here in the menu, if I just use my pointer, you see there's a sign in option, and if I tap on that, then Dorico says that you can register. Or if you already have a My Steinberg ID, then all you need to do is just sign in with your existing My Steinberg ID, and you'll automatically be able to get 4 players. So that's still free. You don't have to do anything extra. That's still free, and you can then use Dorico with 4 players. If you would like some extra options, then you can also subscribe. There's a subscribe button that you can use. So if you then subscribe, then you have this instead. And for $3.99 a month, well, mine's in pounds. If you're in dollars or euros, it's $3.99. Mine's $3.49 in pounds. Or you can have 12 months for the price of 10, and you can then create music for up to 12 players. So it's more like Dorico Elements, but you also get graphical control. So you get an Engrave mode, which you don't normally have even in Dorico Elements. So it's a bit more like Pro at that point. And you can also have playback through third-party audio units. The playback I just played you was actually just using the normal sounds that you will get by default on the iPad, but if you want to use extra audio units, third-party audio units, then you can do that with the subscription as well. So we'll look in detail at all of these and all of the things you can do with it and what you can do. So let's just go back now to the Dorico hub. So I'll click on the top left corner here and go back to the hub and show you some of the things in here. So here what we have is a Learn tab. So if I just select that, in the Learn tab, when you're first getting started, you have some hands-on tutorials. So this is a little project which it won't save, but you can have an introduction to note input. It's a completely guided process. You can click on things and work on things as you're going through there. There's also some videos in the center here. So here's the new videos that have just gone up on our YouTube channel. So this will keep you up to date with what's on there. The Dorico blog. So here we have some items from the Dorico blog, so it will keep you up to date with what's going on there. We've got a link to the manual that Lily's done for us, thank you very much, and also to the forum if you want to ask any questions from there. We also have other pages, so there's a create new page here, and this is where you'll find templates. So we have templates here, for example, for solo instruments. Because I'm also, in this version, I'm subscribed at the moment, then there's also orchestral templates, and there's a jazz template section, and a choral, and a chamber section. And of course there's also just an empty section. If you just need an empty page and you want to start putting your own instruments in, you can start from there. And on the right hand side we can enter the project title and composer, and we can choose, for example, the paper type, and we can choose the music font if you want to start with Petaluma, and you can enter a time signature from here and a key signature. So unlike the desktop version where you always start off just with one beat rest, you can now start here if you want to and get going even quicker by entering these details, and then just click on the create project button at the bottom and that will create your project. You can, of course, also bring your files over from your desktop computer. So in the Open Recent section, here are ones that I've already had open, and there's also an Open or Input button in the bottom left corner. So if you want to, you may connect your iPad to your computer, or maybe on wirelessly or whatever, but you can drag your Dorico files. You don't have to do anything to them, just drag your Dorico file over onto the iPad. You'll have a copy of it on the iPad. You can also use iCloud, or you can use OneDrive, or other cloud services like that. It will copy it from there onto the iPad, so you can then use the file on the iPad. Or you can open your existing Dorico file. So that Brandenburg that I showed you a moment ago was just one of the set works from UK Education. So apologies to any teachers who are already fed up with that and you thought you were on holiday. But that's just a file that I had from the desktop version of Dorico that I brought over. So I'm now going to click on another one of these. So I'm going to load up a file. Here we go. And it's now put me into write mode here. So now let's have a look at how we actually use this and how we get stuck in. There are so many questions happening in the chat that I hope Daniel will be able to answer all of those, and let me know if there's anything then that we haven't quite answered, and I'll answer it as we go. But he looks like he's doing a sterling job. Thank you very much. So how do we use this? How do we enter notes and that kind of thing? Now, I did say you can use an Apple Pencil, but really you don't want to use one of these for note input. I know some apps do that, but I've tried a lot of them, but it's not really that accurate. Yes, you can use it for moving around, you can use it for selecting things, and it may give you more accuracy over those kind of things. But actually, for inputting notes and that kind of thing, there are much better, faster ways of doing that. So let's have a look at some of these. So if I select, for example, I'm just going to use my finger at the moment. We have an electric piano part here. If I just double tap here on the staff, and then I get the caret line. It looks like Dorico, it really does. So I have up here on the left-hand side at the top some buttons, so I can use these to move the caret around. So these are the navigation arrows, and I can move up and down to different staves as well. So I can use those to navigate and move the cursor around should I want to. You can, of course, just double tap and you can kind of get to various places, but if you're not quite in exactly the right place, then you can also use those arrows. If I open up the panel down here, the bottom zone, then I can choose here a keyboard. So now I can use this if I want to input notes. So you might just be able to see on the bottom of the view here, I also have a keyboard attached, but I'm not going to use that right now. I'm just going to use this one on the screen. So just with the touch interface, you can see on this keyboard I can move, if I click on this little keyboard here, I can move around which notes I'm actually seeing. So I can go to lower notes and higher up notes. And I can also click on the edge of this keyboard and I can say how many notes I want to show, and I can also change the size. So you can have really, really tall piano notes, or you can have really, really squat piano notes if you want to get it out of the way. And that might depend on the size of your iPad screen and what you're happy seeing. So that's all customizable for whatever size you need it to be. So now, to input some notes, normally you would use the panel on the left-hand side, but actually you don't always need that. In fact, you very rarely need that. You can use these at the bottom here. So you can see we've got note duration options here in the middle, and we've also got a slur and various other articulation options here, and a respell option on the right-hand side. So what I'm going to do is, I've got my caret line in here, I can select a note value here, and I can just press a note on the keyboard here, and I can enter notes. So that's the first way of doing it. Now there's multiple ways, so bear with me, there's all sorts of ways we can do this. Now I'm just going to select these notes for a second and show you, there's also this little panel here. Now this is called the Edit Notes overlay, and you can put this wherever you like on the screen, you know, put it wherever comfortably suits you. You see there's some options at the top here and then some arrows. So the arrows are going to move the notes first diatonically, so I can click on these arrows and I can move them diatonically. I can also select one or more notes and I can move them along the rhythm grid. So this is the equivalent, of course, doing Alt with the arrows normally on if you have a keyboard attached. And I can also extend and contract these notes along the rhythm grid as well. If you're wondering where the rhythm grid is, there's a button up here on the top tool. It's actually the secondary toolbar here. So here you can change the rhythm grid if you want to any of those different options. With this note selected and this panel here, we can also select the 8 at the top of here, which is for octaves. So now if I use the arrow keys, I can now move those notes by octaves. And there's also an option to move chromatically. So if I choose this option and choose the up and down arrows, for example, I can now move these notes chromatically. So this is, it's going to pop up whenever you're entering notes or whenever you're editing notes, so that you can then navigate things. It's just the Edit Notes overlay. Now I have these notes selected here. There's also on the secondary tool panel here, there's also some other buttons, one of which is repeat. So I'm going to click on the repeat button there, and that will just repeat the notes into the second bar. There's also cut, copy, paste buttons up here, and there's a trash can if you need to put anything in the bin. If I double click here on the top of the electric piano part, I can also use the keyboard to enter things like other notes and chords. So I can choose a different note value. I can play a chord here on this keyboard on the bottom of the screen here. There's also a button here for advancing the caret, so equivalent of the space bar in the desktop version. So if I choose that one, then it will advance the caret by that duration. So much the same as the desktop version. It feels very, very similar when you're using it, even though I'm using a touch interface to do things. So I can choose a different note value, play another chord, I can choose a different note value, enter another chord, and I can use these buttons here to extend and contract along the rhythm grid. So all of those very, very similar as you'd expect as you're doing things. Also with the touch interface, so if I want to do things like extend a selection or add to a selection, there's some buttons at the top up here. So I can select one note here, I can choose extend selection, I can choose another note and it will extend along to that note. This panel we have on the right hand side, or this zone now as we're calling it, on the right hand side has two options at the top up here. So if I just move this cursor over, you can see there's one button here which is a palette. So with that option selected, if I, for example, choose a note and choose the dynamics, then I can enter a dynamic here on the selected note. So this opens very, very similar to the desktop version. In fact, you'll probably immediately recognize it. So one of the options I can just do is to say, click on a dynamic from here, and it will enter a dynamic there. And if I was to change it, of course, it will update. The other option that you can do with this panel over here is if you were to say select a note, maybe extend it to somewhere else, you can also switch here to the keyboard on the top left, on the top right up here. And now you have some extra buttons at the bottom because you've now got all of the options that you would probably also use with a popover in the desktop version. And you can also do that. So if I now click on the Forte for dynamics here, I get the popover. So if you do have a keyboard attached, here's a keyboard attached, then I can now type in, as I would normally, I can just type in any of the dynamics, press enter, and I've entered the dynamics. I can use a lot of the other shortcuts that I would normally use from this keyboard. And you'll see I've also, on this one, it also has a trackpad. So if you have a Bluetooth mouse or if you have one of these trackpads attached to your iPad, then you can also use this mouse if you want to, and you can pinch and zoom in this, and you can use this to navigate around and select things and all those kind of things if you have one. It's not required, but if you have one. And you could do it at the same time as you want, if you want, as the touching the screen. So you can do a bit of this and then use the mouse, and you choose what you want to do. So if you were to choose a note or chord from here, you can use the same kind of shortcuts. So you've got your option up and down arrows, exactly the same as you have on the desktop version. If you select a note and you want to extend it along the rhythm grid, you can use the same shortcuts. If you want to move things in octaves, you can use the same shortcuts. If you want to change modes at the top, so we've got setup mode, so command 1, 2, 3, so we have Engrave mode, we'll look at that in a bit, and play mode. So you can use all the same shortcuts to navigate between all of those, which is very, very useful. So any attached keyboard, it could be a Bluetooth keyboard, it could be attached like this iPad is to this one on its little dock, or whichever one you want to use. And I would potentially say, while it's fine using just the screen and using the touch screen, when people say about being power users of a program and shortcuts and that kind of thing, then a keyboard probably will be even quicker if you do that. There are some other options as well on screen for that you won't have seen from the desktop version. So over here on the left hand panel, for example, we have lots of the same buttons. If I do a long press, so I'm going to press and hold just briefly on one of these buttons, then I can also choose things like other rhythm dots. There's also one here for acciaccaturas and apogaturas, and I can switch between those. And if I long press on the tuplets one, in fact, let's do this on some notes. So I'll select a few notes. In fact, I'll just have 3 actually, thanks. So let's say just from there to there. There we go. So now this tuplet one, if I do the same, long press. So Dorico's given me some options down here, and then there's an X, Y at the bottom, so I can enter in a popover either using the on-screen keyboard or an attached keyboard. You can type into there, or Dorico's just guessing for me that I might have wanted triplets. So there are various new buttons which they're long press, or press and hold, however you want to describe it, on there. So there's also, if you want to use them, if I just move this back slightly, if you have a MIDI keyboard, USB or Bluetooth, then you can use that. So here is a USB keyboard. So I can use this if I wanted to instead, and I could enter notes on the iPad that way. They also do a Bluetooth version of this one. This one's the cabled one, it's on my adapter over here, but you can use USB or you can use a Bluetooth keyboard, and you can then play into, and there's a record button at the top of the screen, which is just off that screen, but you can see on the main screen here, it's a record button, so you can record in with a metronome, you can use your Bluetooth MIDI keyboard if you want to, or your USB MIDI keyboard and play notes in that way. So speed-wise, for entering notes and everything else, it's all good, and I've just knocked my camera. Well done me. There we go. Let's put that back. So let's have a look, and I'll move this forward and readjust things for you so you can all see what's going on. So for other notes, other instruments, when you're doing note entry, you might not always want to use a keyboard on the bottom of the screen here. So what are the other kind of things we can do here? So let's scroll across in this piece, and we'll find, here's a guitar part, there's an empty bar we want to put notes in. There are some up here, but we want to put some in here. So I'll click on the guitar option here, and now we have a guitar fretboard as well. So now I want to enter notes in here instead. And what I'm also going to use is the pitch before duration option. So I'm going to choose the item up here on the left hand side, and now we can say, right, what I need to do now is use this fretboard at the bottom, which I'm not a guitarist, but here we go. So if I say, there we go, and if I was to change this until I get the chord I wanted, I can do that because I'm using the pitch before duration option, and then I can just choose the duration, and I can choose the advance, the caret, like that. And so now I can enter the notes for the guitar down here, and I can use the fretboard. If you were using a bass, for example, let me just scroll down here, then you'll see I've got a 5-string bass because I chose a 5-string when I started this piece, and for guitar up here I've got a 6-string, and you get a 4-string if that's what you've chosen. So entering notes for guitar here. Now you've also got things like layout options. If I use the application menu up the top right up here, then I can go to the layout options. Looks the same as the desktop version. And I can now choose from here, I can now choose my players, and I can choose fretted instruments, and I can choose tablature for the first guitar here. So I'll just press apply and close. So now I've got guitar tab showing here. I mean, you could enter it in guitar tab if that's the way you wanted to start, but switch it over whenever you need. So I've got one in tab and one that isn't. And if I scroll down here, then we also have a drum kit down here. So I'll tap in my drum kit, and in this lower zone, I can choose my drum pads. So now we have drum pads for note entry as well. You can still use a MIDI keyboard if you have one and if you want to do it that way. But if you don't, or you just want to use the on-screen controls, then you can use this. So let me just straighten this little bit up a bit. Nobody's bothered except me. I appreciate that. So these drum pads at the bottom, you can also move these around. So I've added a space. If you want to add a space, you can. You can drag these around, sort them into the order that you want them to be in, and then unpress that button so that you can then use these drum pads. I recommend sorting from the bottom left corner first. So what I've done here is I've sorted my drums from the bottom left corner as kick, snare options, 2 toms and a floor tom, and then on the top row I then sorted my hi-hat close, natural, open, ride and crash. So now I can use these to input notes into here. So I can choose my note durations from here, and I just need to tap on these pads, and I can then enter the drum notation this way. And you can enter your hi-hat open and close and everything else. So you've got drum pads, so we've got a keyboard input, we've got guitar tab, or guitar fretboard I should say, and we've got drum input from there. So there's lots of options that you can use from those, and I said, you can use a MIDI keyboard if you want to, if you've got one attached. You can also still do things like if I select a note or a chord from here, and I wanted to use chords, so let's just slide this forward again slightly. What I'm going to do is I'll use this keyboard and I'll just press Shift Q, exactly the same as I would on the desktop version. I could type in my chord if I wanted to. I can also still use a MIDI keyboard. So here's my MIDI keyboard. If I play a chord in here, there we go. So you just play in the chords. You can still move around with the arrow keys to change anything if you need to. And let's just do, we'll just do one more, there we go. So you can use your MIDI keyboard, and interact with, either way around, enter the chords that way if you want to. And of course the chords, as they are in any version of Dorico, they're global items. So of course the chords that you're entering, you've then got them for all of the instruments that have been added in here. So all sorts of options that you that you have there. Now, if I just go up to this part up here, we have a synth part with lots and lots of notes in it. If I just play this for a second. So all of these here, if I open the bottom panel here, then we also now have here a key editor. So very similar to a sequencer, but you can use this in write mode. You can use it in play mode, but you can also now use it in write mode. This is also resizable, so you can make this as large or as small as you like in this bottom panel down here. There's a little lock symbol, a chain. So if you can turn it off if you want to, but if it's turned on, the notes that you select here will make sure that they are viewed in this area at the bottom. You can pinch and zoom in either direction on this section here. You can also use this control here to pinch and zoom effectively, zooming around and scrolling around if you want to use that one instead. So you've got, you can see exactly what you need to in here. There's also options selecting wise, so you can click and just hold, and then you get this little throbbing box, and then you can drag that out if you want to, and you can see all of the notes selected there. And there's also a select tool that you can do in the same way down here. For any of these notes, you also, of course, you've got our option for showing the note duration, but you can also show the note length duration, so how long they're playing for, the sounding duration as well. And for any of these, now you'll see there are usual 2 little lines, so one of these are very tiny notes, and in fact, let's just use this control for a second. Any of these notes, if you select them, you can then move the ends of these, so you still have all the control over exactly what you want to do. And if you select all of these notes and press S, then all of the notes, of course, because they're in a slur, they'll all become legato. So just undo that. You have the difference between and so all of those controls are also available down here to tweak any of the notes and how long they all sound for, and now you can see they all overlap slightly. We also have a velocity editor down here, so let's just bring some more notes in here. In fact, let's do it both ways. There we go. So we can see lots of notes. So here we have a velocity editor, so it's showing me all the velocities of what's going on. So if I use the same kind of controls and drag out over here, then you can control velocities, and you can control lots of them all at the same time. And you know, this way or this way, you can control individual velocities if you want to. So you can choose individual notes and adjust velocities that way. So you have a lot of control over those. There's also a histogram down here. So if you want to control your note velocities in a histogram, and you have two different ways of showing this histogram as well, then you can do that too. So if you, let's say, all of the notes are, all of the really quiet notes, you just want to bump them up a bit. Well, here are all the quiet notes. It's showing you at the bottom here what the range of the notes are and the average velocities of all of the notes, and you can tweak and just adjust all of the lower notes, I know, all of the lower velocities, and make them louder, or make everything just a bit louder. You can, you know, move everything. So there's all sorts of things you can do with that histogram editor to tweak your note velocities and everything else, as well as the individual control you have here. So that's another option that we have, the new key editor on the iPad. And some of these things in this lower zone, yes, I'm sure we will be able to put these over to the desktop version of Dorico at some point. Now, in this particular case, actually, for this region we have up here, it's quite probable that I don't necessarily want to show all of this. So what I'm going to do is select lots of these notes here, and then I'm going to use the panel over here on the right-hand side. Oh, in fact, I'm in the key option, aren't I? So let's do it with I'll do it that way instead then. So I'll say select from here to here. When I say key option, I'm in the I'm editing things, aren't I? But I'm doing it as if I have a keyboard attached. So I'm going to press Shift R, I'm going to type slash. So now I've got a slash region. I could have done it from this panel on the right hand side, but you choose whichever method you prefer, whether you have a keyboard attached. And you can also tweak these, so you can grab these the grab handles, and you can move those around if you want to. So now we have the slash region. Of course, the notes will still play underneath that, so everything will play as you'd expect. You also have now, as I mentioned at the beginning, you also have engrave mode. So if I choose an item, when I'm in engrave mode, you'll see the different options. So now if you need to, I mean, so this is, it's a 12-player limit, but so it's a bit like Dorico Elements, but Dorico Elements doesn't have engrave mode, and the iPad does. So you can just, you know, tweak the slurs, you can grab the text and you can move it, you can grab, you know, chords or anything else you want to. So you now have the graphical tweaks to all of these items that you would normally only have in Dorico Pro, but you have them on an iPad should you want to use them. So there's also a panel over here on the left hand side, so you can do system breaks, and you can do lock it in, make into system, and you know, those kind of options. They also exist from engrave mode, so that's all very, very handy, especially on an iPad version. We also have play mode. So in play mode here, you can see all of the instruments we have listed here, and you can choose one of the instruments, and we have a mixer at the bottom. You also have various other options you can show here, including if you want to show the key editor, then you can show that there too. If you choose any of these instruments, and you can then set the routing. Now, by default, it will be using this microsonic option here. Microsonic is the option that we use on the QBasis, so QBasis on the iPad. And when you choose any of these instruments, you can then say, I'll choose this one, and then I can change from a whole list of instruments. Now, Dorico will choose, of course, instruments for you by default. This is just if you want to change any of them. But, you know, you have your viola, violin, cello, tenor sax, there's some studio strings and string sections in here. There's all sorts of instruments in here. So you can choose from lots of these instruments if you want to for any of the standard things here. You can also choose, for example, if I choose the mellotron track, I've chosen from the drop down, I've added a free audio unit instrument. So search for audio units or AUV3 in the App Store, and you can download. And some of them are, you know, you can buy from other third-party companies, but this was a little free option. So I'm going to click on the little E, and down here in this editor, I now have volume and tone control and pitch controls and wind controls. So this is a free, by Fingerlab, a free little instrument I've downloaded because I fancied using a mellotron. And if I click on lead synth, then I also chose a primer, which is another free synth here. And so there's various options you can choose in this one, and there were some presets. I've chosen the Gordon Rudeness. No guesses there as to what that might do or sound like, or why it's called that. So you can choose if you want to a different audio unit instrument for any of those. And like I said, you can see the mixer here, and you also over here have the master channel. So if you click on the E for the master channel, then there's also reverb options that you can have for the output for the master channel as well. So if we now have let's have a quick listen to this. So you'll hear most of the the main instruments that you would expect, and then the mellotron and the lead synth I've added as extra audio unit instruments. There's your mellotron. You can make these fade as big as you like. Just thought that would be something completely different and show off some completely different instruments than what we started with the Brandenburg. So there are a few other things that I want to show you in this. So yes, we're not finished yet. So over here on the right hand side, if I make a selection of a note or a chord over here, there's a 3-dot little menu here. This is our context menu. So in here there's all sorts of things, and you can scroll this menu to see what's going on here. So we have some paste special options, so there's move to staff above, below, and duplicate. Again, if you have a keyboard attached and you want to set shortcuts to those, then you can do, just like the desktop version. We have some filters here, so depending on what you have selected will depend on what you can select from and filter from there. There's a transpose option. Of course, you could select everything and transpose the whole piece if you wanted to. There's add notes option. The add intervals popover is in here as well if you want to use that. There's a flip option. Add intervals and flip you can also, of course, use from a Bluetooth keyboard if you want. So if you press F, it will flip. If you use Shift-I, you will add intervals. Then there's all these other options in here. And if you scroll down, for example, you've also in the staff section, there's manual staff visibility also exists on the iPad version. So that's this context menu here, depending on what you have selected, depends what appears there. You'll also have here, there's a little button which is an I for the view options. So in the view options, you can do things like choose whether you want to show the system track, or if you want signposts to be turned on, and then you can switch to things like galley view as well. This is where concert pitch and transpose pitch, you can switch those as well. So if we switch this over to galley view, and press close, it's turned on bar numbers automatically for us. So now we have this piece in galley view, which is often the view that people prefer to work in when they're working on a particular piece. Up here at the top of the screen, we have the drop down where you can choose your score and parts as you would expect. So if you wanted to choose, go to, for example, a particular part, then you can do that from there. In the top right-hand corner, there's the application menu. And in the application menu, you've got things like, we'll come back to read mode, there's project info, so where you enter the title and that kind of thing if you haven't done it at the beginning, but you can also just click on the title up here, and you can enter all of your details into here. So, and that's the same as the project info up here. There's notation options, which looks very much like you would expect from the desktop version. So here are, all of the options you would often choose. And over here we looked at layout options briefly earlier. There's the preferences in there as well. So these options from the application menu on the top right hand side. Now there's also a read mode. So let's actually just open another file for a second. So I'm going to go back to the hub for a second, and I'm going to choose a different one here. So what we have here is a piece that I brought over from the desktop version of Dorico, which is solo piano. It's a bit of Liszt, so in fact, I don't think we've heard a piano yet, so let's just play a bit of this one. So there's the piano, and as I said, if you want to choose a different piano, go and have a look on the App Store. There are other pianos that are also available as audio unit instruments if you want to use them. But in this piece, and so I've got the full score, and I've got the part in this particular case, but I want to now put this on my piano so that I can play it. There's no chance of me ever actually being able to play this, but I know a lot of you are far cleverer and far more accomplished musicians than I am. So let's say you want to put this on your piano. So you take your iPad, here I have them in my hand, and then you use 4-finger tap on the screen, and you're now in read mode. So now if I just move this round this way, here we go. So now you can see that I'm now in read mode, and so if I tap on the right hand side of the screen, I can view the next page, and if I tap on the left hand side of the screen, I can view the previous page. So I can now do my page turns. If I want to do this hands-free, so let's say I'm not going to tap at all on this, but I'm going to use a Bluetooth MIDI pedal, then I can tap with my Bluetooth MIDI pedal, which you can't see my foot, but believe me, that's what I'm doing, because I'm not touching anything else. And there we go, I can do next and previous, so I can turn all my pages hands-free with this sat on my on the piano, and let me just put that back on the dock there. Now you can also do this if you were using, let's say, a piece of music from the desktop version. So let's say I've finished a piece of music on the desktop version. If I go back to the hub, let's say I'm going to use Mahler 6, because this version, of course, has far too many instruments to use on the iPad version. There's a 12-player limit. There's far too many. Even if I switch over to my A4 condensed version, I've got everything here and everything's showing condensed, so it's showing that because I turn the condensing on the desktop version, I can see everything condensed. But I can now say, let's say I'm the first clarinetist, and if I just tap screen, I'm now in read mode. So now I have my clarinet part in read mode. I can do next page and previous page, put this on my music stand, and I'm set and ready to go. So I've just taken a Dorico file from the desktop version, even though there is a little lock symbol at the top. So I can't edit this file, but I can still view any of the score and parts and do anything that I can play it as well if I want to, and I can use read mode, so I can use that then on my music stand. So I hope this has given you a great overview of what you can now do. You can go to the App Store, download Dorico for free today. Why not subscribe for a month? It's $3.99 or euros a month, and just check out all the features. The App Store is, of course, a recurring payment, so there's no penalties for subscribing occasionally. If you want to try it out now and then you want to go, cancel the recurring payment, no problem. If you want to subscribe only when you go on holiday or on a trip, no problem. There's no penalties for doing that. We are using subscriptions only because that's the only way to do things on the App Store. There isn't really another way. No, we're not doing subscriptions on the desktop version. This is just if you want to use this version on the from the App Store. And of course, like we said, there's a free version, and if you already have a My Steinberg account, then just sign in and you can use 4 players anyway. So you can play around with all these options and move your existing files over from the desktop version. So I can see there's all sorts of questions going on here in the chat, but I know Daniel's also been answering a lot of those as well. So, and I'll stay on the stream for a bit as well to answer any further questions. I'm sure Daniel has ably answered them all, but we'll also be available. And get in touch with us on social media, and tell us what you think. Are there other features that you would really like in this on this app? Because this is for me, it's a very good start. This has lots and lots of the features I would like. What else are the kind of things you would like? If we definitely have enough interest in this, then yeah, let's see what else we can do. So, as I said, get in touch via social media. You can email me on discoverdorico@steinberg.de. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter and all those kind of things. And thank you for joining us today.